What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about Joel Webbon. We're talking about the guy from Right Response Ministries. I've talked about this a little bit on Twitter, but I wanted to actually make a video and stream for you guys and talk about this thing because, wow, is this troubling. Now, a couple of things right off the top. I have not been shy about my issues with Right Response Ministries, Joel Webbon, pretty much everything that he's doing, his association with Doug Wilson, with the patriarchy boys, with all that stuff, with the mermaids and the fairies and the ridiculous theology that is attached to these things, and really the extremism that he has fallen into. About a year ago, maybe even more than that now, I did a series on these guys, these Christendom 2.0, at least at the time, that's the phrasing that they wanted to use. And I did like the series going through each one of these teachers and their backgrounds. A few things I want to say right off the bat. I was pretty kind with Joel Webbon at that time because a lot of the super extreme stuff, he hadn't come out and said it. And so at the time, I didn't know those things because he hadn't said those things. And then since then, this last year, he's been basically going on like this, like real downward spiral into just ludicrous teachings and just really dark stuff, to the point where just this last, not this Sunday, but the Sunday before, at his church, he was preaching and said some things that we're going to be discussing and taking a look at. This is not some gotcha thing. I want to say that right off the bat, because a lot of times these guys, one, they watch every single video that is made about them or has anything to do with them because they're media junkies. As much as they go like, oh, these people, they need to get outside. They don't, or at least they bring their phones outside and just stream everything. So I know that these people, Joel, people like him will be watching the stream, and I know it might seem like a gotcha kind of video, like, oh, I found it. I deep dived into your stuff and I found it. I want to be really clear. This was like in the first 10 seconds of watching a video that YouTube suggested for me, because when you talk about these guys enough, YouTube will hound you for the rest of your days with these videos and be like, you need to watch every single one. And I choose not to. But I was like, oh, he's preaching. Let me see what his preaching is like. And I clicked. Okay. My bad. But this was like literally the first 10 seconds of having clicked on that video. And I'll say anyone could have done that. So just because, like, you might be like, oh, he's that guy who's coming for all these guys. It's not what I'm about. And I would give people the benefit of doubt if they hadn't lost that. And these people have definitely lost that benefit. So let's take a look at what Joel Webbon had to say. So all those caveats out of the way. And let's take a look at what he preached from his own pulpit. See how many caveats I'm giving here. All right. This is what he had to say.
Son of Gondor. Now the point in bringing this up is that virtually every single generation of people that precedes this postmodern, effeminate generation we have now, every prior generation, they thought very differently than we think today. And one particular aspect of their distinct thinking from ours is that they actually thought that lineage and blood mattered.
All right, he's talking about your race, your ethnicity. Now, I'm sure that these kinds of people would be like, but it's not tied to your location, so it's different. But he's talking about your blood. And he's using this illustration of Lord of the Rings because these guys love Lord of the Rings. I'll talk about it here in a sec. All right, I've got some issues. But he's talking about blood. All right, this is not me putting words in his mouth. Let's just look at what he has to say.
That it mattered. They actually thought, it was common knowledge. This is how people used to think. They would think, this person is a son of so-and-so, son of so-and-so, son of so-and-so, the heir of a long legacy, a long lineage, and therefore he has noble blood. And what does that mean? It means that there is strength within him. We today, as moderns, modern Westerners, we really think that it doesn't matter. That there's nothing to be said for heritage and lineage and blood. And really, a lot of what we have going on today, there are a few people, this isn't original to me, a few people have provided this insight, have noticed part of what's going on in a political and cultural sense in America and the West really just in general. Part of what's going on is that we are ruled now by theater kids. And I don't know if you've noticed, but that's
a little ironic for the guy who is literally giving an illustration about Lord of the Rings, talking about, theater kids. Like, I don't know what high school you went to, but Lord of the Rings, like I was on the basketball team. I was too busy playing sports, but, Lord of the Rings, no shade against Lord of the Rings. My wife is super into it, but I'm just saying, you want to talk about like theater kids? I don't know. You're reading Lord of the Rings.
But that hasn't been working out very well. It's not a good thing. The kids that should have been shoved harder into lockers when they were growing up are now ruling us. And you might think, wait a second, that does not sound like something a pastor should say.
You'd be right.
Like, is he about to make an argument for physiogamy? A little bit. A little bit. Like, there's actually something to be said for innate courage. Innate courage that comes through long lineages of generation after generation after generation of courageous people. That you actually can't just take anyone and make them king. The Bible, okay? So if you're like, well, I don't know if quoting Lord of the Rings is sufficient. Okay, that's it. Honestly, it should be. It should be. But the Bible, of course, is superior to the Lord of the Rings. But the Lord of the Rings is great. The Bible tells us that it's actually painful for the populace. It is an incredibly negative thing. It's a judgment from the Lord. It decimates whole societies and whole nations when what happens? When a pauper becomes king.
This is just bad Bible, by the way, because you literally have Saul. Now, Saul made some mistakes, but the Lord picked him. He was just a random guy. All right, you have David, who's literally a little shepherd boy being picked by the Lord. Like, all right, you could go and be like, well, according to Matthew, everything is like there's some lineage there, and okay. But the Bible is full of God picking random people from random backgrounds to do amazing things. So, like, his thinking is not in accordance with the Bible, at least when it comes to that as well. But we'll dive more into it in just a sec.
That's actually not a positive thing, right? Disney's hardest hit. I thought that was a good thing because those in power and those from a long lineage of power and authority, those are the bad guys, But whenever, a street rat, riff raff, da 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 da, right?
All right. Again, I have no issues with someone who likes Lord of the Rings or likes Disney. But you literally just started this with like, we're ruled by theater kids and like mocking theater kids. And then he's up here singing Disney songs, okay? Like, he might be making fun of it, but he knows it and he's bringing it up on stage. So you guys can't have it both ways.
A pauper, a peasant, he becomes king. And what does that mean? It means justice will flow through the land and he'll be kind. No, that's not what the Bible teaches. A peasant becomes a king and everybody's actually in trouble because he's a fool. And because he doesn't come from a long lineage of tutors and fathers who have shaped him and forged him and trained him in virtue. What Aragorn is saying in this little moment between Boromir doesn't like Aragorn because Boromir is the son of the steward of Gondor. But the steward is merely that. He is a steward. He's just a placeholder for what? For the one true king. And Aragorn has been a ranger in the shadows, doing his own private thing, finding himself. He hasn't been acting particularly kingly. But he does have within his veins royal blood. Aragorn is the rightful king. And notice what he says here to Boromir as Boromir is dying. One, he aligns with him.
All right.
He doesn't say it's me versus...
That's enough. He goes off about Boromir and whatever. But you could hear it there. You could hear it in the blood. It's in the blood of a person. He says that it's not good for some random person to be given authority. All right, and he refers to it as being a king, like that you need royal blood. You know, you could say that it has something to do with his background and being raised, but the whole idea of like this lineage, and the word that he uses, heritage, to talk about, you know, this background that someone might have, what does that have to do with that person? Very little. I mean, maybe your father and your grandfather, if you want to be all patriarchal about it and just focus on the men, which I'm sure is pretty much what he would do. Like, you might know 2 generations, but you don't know the others, right? Like, there's nothing associated with this person right now in the present having this connection to this heritage. But you heard it several times in just this quick little thing about blood. You know, for a group of theologians that are so close to being associated with racism, and by that, I'm obviously talking about Doug Wilson and his racism that you can hear, that you can read about. He has books about it, about slavery in the South and how it wasn't a big deal. If you were a considerate theologian, all right, someone who thought through their positions and understanding that you are closely associated with someone who's right there on the verge, even if you're like, no, Dean, I don't think you can accurately say that. I think you're wrong. But you can say I'm wrong. That's fine. But we can agree that that's close. You think that you'd be a little bit more considerate about how you would appear and the language that you would use and ridiculous examples that don't have anything to do with the text that he's talking about. You want to talk about some of like these celebrity pastors and, you know, taking a dive into whatever discussion they want to have. This has nothing to do with his scripture passage. This was just an illustration that he had so he could talk about Lord of the Rings because he loves it so dang much, which, you know, whatever, fine. But here, he's making an argument that your blood matters. He uses blood. He uses heritage. He doesn't say that it's like the exact, you know, the father-grandfather mentoring. He does use that to talk about it a little bit, but he's talking about this long line and that there's nobility in the blood. And he's mocking modernists, people today, you know, who these people, the audience that he's preaching to, would obviously associate modernist with liberal. And so he's mocking people today for not thinking that's a big deal. But that's Western civilization. For a guy who argues for Western civilization and how we need to fight for it and reclaim it and Christianize it and all this stuff, to have so little understanding about history of Western civilization, understanding that was like a core concept of the idea that it doesn't matter what your nationality is. It doesn't matter what your blood is. It just matters who you are, that you could overcome things, that you can have good ideas and change the world through your ideas. That's Western civilization 101. Like that's just common sense, first off. And then it's also, it's a way that the Western civilization has been shaped. And now here he is saying, actually, Western civilization has gotten this core concept wrong because we don't need Aladdin's, which is a terrible example. Like he was a criminal. Like criminals aren't going to, do so much good, I don't think. But it's a terrible example, but he's arguing that you have to have noble blood. That's the phrase that he used, noble, this nobility in the blood, all right? That you have to have noble blood to accomplish great deeds and be an authority. This is super scary stuff. I would say this is racist. Like, it's not just the fact that, okay, you have a background that you can lean on, all right? He's talking specifically of the blood, not background, not family, not just lineage. He used the word blood several times. He's talking about something he says innate courage, which means that something within you, which isn't talking about your background that you're supported by. It's something within you, and in combination with the blood that he's referencing here, What else are we supposed to take this as other than your blood, whoever he's talking to, whatever nobility he's trying to describe, that your blood makes you better. You're more worthy for authority. If that's true, then that means that there are those who are not as worthy because of their blood. That's racism. Like, I don't understand why no one else, like, I'm sure other people saw this. I'm sure people in his congregation heard this. I'm kind of shocked that he hasn't been thrown out of his pulpit, or that nobody seems to be talking about it online. He just got up and basically said one of the most racist things I've seen, that isn't just like, these kind of people are the worst, or calling people some kind of awful ethnic slur. Like, he's not doing that, but this is the most racist thing I've seen from coming from behind a pulpit. That your blood makes you more worthy for some position of authority over others. Well, who are those people that you're being put over authority? What is their blood? I mean, you can hear it, right? Like, this says, like, this sounds like everything you would have heard during World War II, right? Like, this isn't that far. And this is why I go, these guys need to be stopped at this point. Like, we need heavy hitters that aren't just, guys like me hanging out in my basement talking about this stuff. Where's the Gospel Coalition when you need it? Like, let's get together and, make a coalition against this stuff. Like, this just flat out racist garbage that he's peddling to his congregation and peddling to thousands. There are thousands of views on that video. He's gained in so much popularity right there with Driscoll. All these guys. And I don't think that we're that far removed from guys like Driscoll saying similar things. I've noticed a trend. All right. Now, like, I don't think Brian Sauvé has sounded like this before. I don't think that Eric Kahn, even though, like, he might be just the worst guy on Twitter, but I haven't heard him say something like this before. But I'm starting to see more and more of this kind of rhetoric, where it might not be an ethnic slur being thrown at somebody, but this idea that because of who you are, where you've come from, that makes you better than someone else who came from a different background. This has become more and more prevalent. And I will say, it started with the statement on social justice. All right, John MacArthur and all his buddies, G3 guys, getting together and talking about how one civilization can be better than another, or one society can be better than another society, like, just because of where they're at, where they come from. That's not biblical. All right, what do you believe? It's about what you believe. It's not about your background, your social construct that you fit into. It's about who you are. Do you believe the gospel? Do you preach the gospel? Do you evangelize? These are the things that we need to be concerned about, not a society. Now, when that statement came out, I said that stuff. I was like, this is pretty dang close to saying, like, that just because we have basically we stole some stuff from Europe and came up with our own ideology a little bit. But yeah, kind of AI, like just taking something that somebody else wrote and passing it off as your own. But we basically just did that with our civilization. But just because we're from here in North America and given, all kinds of different kinds of freedoms doesn't make me better than someone who's from South Sudan. I'll just use that as an example because it's on my mind, because USA basketball is going to be playing South Sudan, I think on Wednesday. But it doesn't make me any better than someone from there, someone from China, someone from whatever civilization. What do you believe about the gospel? What do you believe about Jesus? That's what matters. And this, I think, is becoming more and more of a talking point, and they're going to be getting more and more strong. I don't know if they're going to go this far, but I know that they're going to be saying more and more. And I'm seeing stuff online, things, maybe it's something just because Elon Musk took over Twitter and changed the algorithms, and I'm seeing more than I've ever seen before, stuff I don't want to see, words I don't want to see, but I'm seeing a lot of racist stuff floating around the internet. And I know maybe I'm just sheltered. But I just like look at that and go, it's getting worse and worse. And then I see theologians, I'll use that, theologians getting up here and saying stuff like this. And I'm seeing Christians using the N-word. That's happened. A bunch of Christians I thought like maybe they disagreed from, stuff that I would say, but I wouldn't have thought that they would go that far. I'm seeing stuff like that on Twitter. I'm seeing all kinds of just awful stuff, and it's flowing from this wellspring of truth. This garbage world is the phrase that they came up with or that they're using. And I think it's pretty appropriate for all the truth that's coming out of there, because it ain't truth. So don't fall in with these guys. Even if you like something they say, even if you like the kind of rhetoric that they use and some of the economic stuff, you like Trump, you like conservative politics, like these aren't the guys to follow. These are pretenders. These are drama theater kids pretending that they're not and saying like, hey, follow us because of Lord of the Rings. Don't you want to have that innate courage? There is no such thing as innate courage other than the image of God that everybody has. It's not a thing. Your blood makes no difference. We are going to go to a chill stream where we can deal with some of your guys' thoughts. I will do my best to take note of what's in the chat right now, and we will deal with that in the other stream in just a second. Bye.